Good morning. I'm Councilmember Adrienne Adams. Welcome to this meeting of the Subcommittee on Landmarks, Public Sitings, and Dispositions. We will vote to approve LU 545, an application submitted by HPD for an amendment to the Blake Hendricks Affordable Homeownership, NIHOP, Urban Development Area Project, previously approved by Council Resolution 1263 of 2017. The amendment would allow HPD to forgive all or portion of the land debt to reduce the taxable consideration of the home. The application relates to a cluster of properties in Councilmember Barron's district in Brooklyn. We will also vote to approve LUs 546, 547, and the pre-considered LU for HPD application number 2025-11 HAM, all related to the NME 11 West 140th and West 150th Street UDAP, approving HPD's acquisition of property located at 207 through 209 West 140th Street and 304 through 308 West 150th Street, the designation of an urban development action area project for such properties and an exemption from real property taxes for the project area. These actions will facilitate a mixed-use development containing approximately 52 affordable housing units in Councilmember Perkins' district in Manhattan. The council member is in support of these actions. We will also vote on the proposed borough-based jail system. We vote today on a plan to close Rikers Island and the existing detention centers in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, because history has shown us that these are places our sons and daughters have experienced despair and hopelessness, violence and suffering. Responding to the advocacy of dedicated criminal justice stakeholders, many of whom themselves experienced the harsh conditions of Rikers Island, the council has secured a total of $469,895,000 in commitments for criminal justice-related programming and community-based investments. These commitments consist of $158 million that is already budgeted, $189 million in new expense funding, and a $122.4 million for new capital projects ranging from affordable housing for the justice involved to mental health programs and new community centers for our young people. We have also heard local community feedback loud and clear, concerns about the scale of these new buildings and their impact on the surrounding communities. The council has aggressively advocated for design changes, and as a result of the council's modifications, the heights and densities of the four buildings are being reduced significantly.
Historically, the penitentiary system was instituted at the end of chattel slavery in America. And it was a system that was devised to continue a source of free labor, which is how we got the convict leasing system, that continued free or cheap labor for the capitalistic interests of the United States. Someone last week referred to the justice system and said it's not broken because it's doing what it was intended to do, provide cheap labor. I think that the problems are many, but it's inappropriate detention, and the poor, who are mainly Black and Latino, are the ones who are detained. Those who have money can, in fact, post bail.
The borough-based jail system is comprised of 13 related items, pre-considered LUs 513 through 516 and LUs 518 through 526. They include a zoning text amendment creating a citywide special permit for borough-based jails facilities, a site selection application for borough-based jail facilities in Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn, 4 special permits, 1 for each borough-based jail facility, 3 city map change applications affecting certain streets and public spaces in Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan, an acquisition of property for the Manhattan borough-based jail facility, and 3 actions related to the provision of affordable housing near the Bronx borough-based jail facility, a zoning text amendment, a zoning map change, and a UDAP area and project designation and disposition. In addition to modifying the 4 special permits, we will also be modifying pre-considered LU 515 to strike MIH option 2, and will add the deep affordability option to MIH option 1. I now call for a vote to approve LU numbers 545 through 547, the pre-considered LU for HPD application number 202-05116 HAM, and to approve with the modifications I have described pre-considered LUs 513 through 516 and LUs 518 through 526. Council, please call the roll.
Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
Councilmember Barron.
I vote aye on all with the exception of land use 513 through 516 and 518 through 526.
Councilmember Koo.
With all that said, I will yes on all the bills mentioned. Thank you.
Councilmember Miller.
I vote aye on all.
Councilmember Trigger.
Aye.
By a vote of 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, with 0 abstentions, LU numbers 545 through 547, the pre-considered LU for HPD application number 2025-116 HAM, and by a vote of 4 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, pre-considered LUs 513 through 516 and LUs 518 through 526 are recommended for referral to the full Land Use Committee.
Just one final note from myself. You know, we've taken a lot of votes in council as of late that have been extremely personal for me. And this one in particular was perhaps the most personal. Having a child that has gone through the system, could have been a lot worse, but also on the other side of the coin, being raised by a correction officer. So having lived the life of a child whose mother very proudly, I might add, retired as a captain from the Department of Corrections and worked in Rikers Island for many, many years. I was a latchkey kid under her leadership and guidance. So you're looking at a proud product of a CO who, when I told her, Mom, we're going to be talking about Rikers and closing Rikers, she said, baby, they should have closed it a long time ago. And it is a two-way street at Rikers Island. It is a one-way street for detainees, and it is another street for the COs who suffer as well because of the culture that has been ingrained in Rikers Island and the spirit and the walls of Rikers Island. And so I sit here before you to champion the closure immediately. Thank you all for your resilience. This meeting is hereby adjourned.
And welcome to the Committee on Land Use. I am Councilmember Rafael Salamanca, the chair of this committee. Today, from our land use subcommittees, we'll vote on 3 projects. We will vote to approve the LUs 545, an application submitted by the HPD for an amendment to the Blake Hendricks Affordable Homeownership NIHOP Urban Development Area Project, previously approved by Council Resolution 1263 of 2017. The amendment would allow HPD to forgive all or a portion of the land debt to reduce the taxable consideration of the homes. The application relates to a cluster of properties in Councilmember Barron's district in Brooklyn. We will also vote on LUs 546, 547, and the preconsidered LUs 20205, 116 HAM, all related to the NME 3 West 140th and West 150th Street UDAP, approving HPD's acquisition of property located at 207-209 West 140th Street and 304-308 West 150th Street. The designation of an urban development action area and project for such properties and an exemption from property taxes. These actions will facilitate a mixed-use development containing approximately 52 affordable housing units in Councilmember Perkins' district in Manhattan. We will also be voting with modifications, the borough-based jail applications. This project is comprised of 13 related items, pre-considered LUs 513 through 516, and LUs 518 through 526. They include a zoning text amendment creating a citywide special permit for borough borough-based jail facilities, a site selection application for borough-based jail facilities in Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. 4 special permits, 1 for each borough-based jail facility, 3 city map change application affecting certain streets and public places in Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan, an acquisition of property for a Manhattan borough-based jail facility, and 3 action related to the provision of affordable housing near the Bronx borough-based jail facility, a zoning text amendment, a zoning map change, and a UDAP area and project designation and disposition. In addition to modify the 4 special permits, we will also be modifying pre-considered LU 515 to strike MIH option 2, and will add the deep affordability option to MIH option 1. I know there have been disagreements on this plan. Both opponents and supporters have been very emotional in their advocacy, but I believe it is important for us to disagree respectfully and move forward today to tackle new and different challenges together tomorrow. Are there any questions or remarks from members of the committee? All right, seeing none, I will call for a vote to approve LUs numbers 545-547, the preconsiders LUs 20205-116 HAM, and to approve with modifications, I have described preconsiders 513 through 516 and LUs 518 through 526. Will the clerk please call the roll?
William Martin, Committee Clerk. Roll call vote, Committee on Land Use. All items are coupled. Chair Salamanca.
I will be voting no on 518 and 519, and yes on the rest.
Landsman. Richards.
Aye.
Gibson. Barron.
As concerns the borough-based jails, I'm not supporting that. I think that it does not address the issue, which is that this justice system, as it's called, continues to have black and brown persons detained at rates that do not reflect what it is in our communities, in the totality of our society, and that judges continue to have judicial discretion to be able to decide who they will in fact detain and they will in fact let go. And most often black and brown people are the ones that are detained, and those who are more affluent and those who are white in fact are not detained. So I'm voting aye on all, with the exception of 513 through 516 and 518 through 526.
Deutsch.
No on LU 513 through 516 and 518 through 526. No on the rest.
Koo.
I will aye.
Levin.
I vote aye on all. Thank you.
Miller.
Aye.
Reynoso.
I vote aye on all.
Traeger. Grodenchik.
And I vote aye on all.
Adams. Diaz.
I have a problem. Public schooling in our community, in our neighborhood, there are pits. Public school in our neighborhood, they need money. But there's no money. There is no money to educate our children. There's no money to fix our school. There's no money to get air conditioning and nice equipment to our children. NYCC. Oh, progressive. You go around killing NYCC because all the things, the wrongdoing they're doing to our community. There's no boiler. They're going through a winter with no boiler. There's no way to solve that problem. And our member, our resident in NYCC, they have to suffer every single winter because there's no money. But you're progressive. You go around, oh, we got to help it. But there's no money for that. But there are $11 billion to build 4 new buildings. Staten Island, as I say, has been exempted. Why? Why Staten Island has been exempted and we are voting, oh, yeah. Why? What is going to happen when we close Rikers Island? What's going to happen with that land? What is the purpose? Who's going to get the control of that land? What's happening? How come nobody knows what's going to happen there? Why housing inmate in a high-rise building will make it better for the health? In the Bronx, the community planning board of the area unanimously voted against this. In the Bronx, the community planning board The Bronx Borough president is against this. The community of the area is against this. But I see members, even from the delegation from the Bronx, being undecided. What is that to be undecided? Why are you voting yes for this? You're not helping the inmates. You are going against your community. And I am a conservative. I've been criticized for being conservative. But you remember, you are progressive. Show it now. You are progressive. Protect your community. Protect the senior citizen. Man, the senior citizen in Castle Hill project, the senior citizen there, go ask them how go every year they go with no heat, with no heat and no air conditioning during the whole year. Why? There is no money to protect the senior citizen. There is no money to give them service, but there is $11 billion to build 4 new houses. Mr. Chairman, my vote is no, no, no in everything. Thank you very much.
Moya.
Aye.
Gibson.
Yes on today's proposal and everything on today's agenda.
Councilmember King.
I'm voting no today, and I urge everyone else moving forward to do so.
Today's land use agenda, land use items 513, 514, 515, 516, 520, 521, 522, 523, 524, 525, and 526 have been adopted by the committee, 12 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative, and no abstentions. And land use items 518 and 519 are adopted by the committee, 11 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative, and no abstentions.
All right, I would like to thank members of the public, my colleagues, council, and land use staff for attending today's hearing. This meeting is hereby adjourned.
Good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Subcommittee on Zoning and Franchises. I'm Councilmember Francisco Moya, the chairperson of this subcommittee. The 25 Central Park West proposal on today's agenda. I note that the council is in receipt of a letter of a written statement from the applicant that the application has been withdrawn pursuant to Council Rule 11.60B. The preconsidered LU number C19039ZMM for the 25 Central Park West proposal is hereby withdrawn. I now call a vote to file the preconsidered LU items number C19039ZMM for the 25 Central Park West rezoning proposal to remove it from our calendar. Council, please call the roll.
A vote of 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions. The items are recommended for referral to the full Land Use Committee.
We will now move on to a hearing on preconsidered land use items C180524ZMK and N180525ZRQ for the 101 Fleet Place rezoning proposal related to the property in Majority Leader Cumbo's district in Brooklyn, and she has joined us. The applicant seeks approval of a zoning map amendment to rezone an existing R6 district to a C6-4 district and to extend the special downtown Brooklyn district as well as a related zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area utilizing options 1 and 2. Together, these actions would facilitate the construction of a new 14-story commercial building.
Good afternoon. I'm Raymond Levin, Special Senior Counsel at the law firm of Herrick Feinstein. We represent the Lesser Group, which is doing business as Fleet Center, Inc., the applicant for a zoning map amendment to allow development of a 14-story office building on Fleet Place in downtown Brooklyn. Our appearance here today was preceded by multiple meetings with local stakeholders, including our neighbors at University Towers and Ingersoll Houses, the Service Workers Union, the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, Community Board 2's Land Use Committee, among others. We believe this outreach was part of the reason that there was no objection at any of the 3 Euler public hearings, Community Board, Borough President, and City Planning Commission, although there was someone from Rockaway, Queens who testified against us at the City Planning Commission. Nevertheless, the Planning Commission adopted a zoning map amendment that differed from our proposal. Our proposed building of 14 stories, reducing it to 9 stories.
Would you still intend to build an office building under C61?
Yes.
Are you committed to making sure that the daycare center can return to the new building when it is completed?
Yes, we've indicated at all of those hearings I mentioned and today that we will accommodate them back into the new building should they desire to come back. If they haven't found a long-term home and desire to come back, they can come back.
How much is the daycare center paying currently for square footage in the building at this time?
I believe that their current rent, as what I was told, is $15 a foot.
My name is Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of the Rockaways, supporter of medical and religious freedom, 9/11 first responder, U.S. Navy veteran, 30 years with New York City Transit. I commend the City Planning Commission for when they said bring down the size. The size, 14 stories, they wanted 21 originally, is too, on that small street, too big of a building. I also agree that I don't want to see people from the neighborhood thrown out, like this daycare from $15 to $42 an hour. That's the displacement that the Coalition of the Rockaways and other districts is against. The thing of jobs, I tell you the truth, my organization cares more about union jobs for people, for futures. In the Rockaway, we don't want a job that the guy works 1 year and then he don't have no work after that. To my organization and to me personally, it's a very important thing, because to go get a regular job and I had problems, just say, and then I worked for 1 year, that's not going to really help me that much. The guy's talking, there's no guarantees that he's going to keep it as just an office building. Then they can sell it to somebody else. There's no guarantee in writing. And if they do, and then they put up the 34-story hotel, then it's all like the goodness, because you guys have good hearts and mean well. The prices are so high, it's ridiculous. I like development, but the right development. Like you said about other districts implicating for jobs, we need, in all districts, is a very important factor. Because without that, if you're gonna say, in my neighborhood, yeah, and then the daughter not using union apprenticeship programs, to me, you need that, because that's a future for the people. If you accept it on one job, like that, then what about the other jobs that you guys approve for other districts? When you get a commitment, you have to make sure that it's really there, because anybody could sell something. It sounds good. The man who was speaking about jobs, yeah, that's nice. He's, spoke very nice and, good ideas, but he's not the developer. And then you're talking 11 jobs, you're talking 12 jobs. For 14 stories, there gotta be more jobs than that. Mm-hmm. And 14 stories for Fleet Street is too big. 9 stories, the daycare must be able to come back at 15, at whatever they're paying now. They were in the neighborhood before. This is displacement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Ayala, and I am the chair of the Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction. Today, we are holding a vote on a bill that is an essential piece of the puzzle in getting people who don't need to be locked up out of Rikers Island. Proposed Introduction 1590A, a local law in relation to requiring correctional health services to report information to the attorney of record for individuals in the custody of the Department of Corrections who are diagnosed with a serious mental illness. Unfortunately, even as the city's jail population continues to decrease, the percentage of individuals who are on Rikers and are diagnosed with serious mental illness is going up. Locking up people who are sick is wrong, and it doesn't dissolve anything. Despite the excellent work of the medical staff at Correctional Health Services, it's hard to imagine a worse place to maintain stability and mental wellness than Rikers Island. While it is true that a lot of people come into jail because they lack access to medication, housing, and social support necessary to cope with serious mental illness, it is absolutely unnecessary to keep them there for as long as we do. People with SMI, on average, stay in jail for much longer than everyone else. We need to find a better solution. We need to find a way to connect people to community supports rather than keeping them behind bars. But that can't happen without the cooperation of the courts that put people in Rikers in the first place and have the power to get them help in settings where they can learn and function on their own in society and get the community supports that will keep them healthy. This legislation is simple. It requires correctional health services to tell defense lawyers about their clients' medical needs, their symptoms, and their progress. That way, when people get better and are able to manage their daily routines without being detained, their attorneys can find treatment and housing alternatives and advocate to the judges and the DAs for their clients' release. The truth is that we also need major reinvestments in our healthcare system going forward, but this bill is a crucial step in getting people who shouldn't be in jail into the community-based treatment. Now we will do a roll call.
William Martin, Committee Clerk, roll call vote, Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction. Introduction 1590A, Chair Ayala.
Yes.
Cabrera.
Aye.
Van Bramer.
Aye.
Ampry Samuel. Aye. Final vote is 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions. Item has been adopted by the committee.
And this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am City Council Member Keith Powers, Chair of the Committee on Criminal Justice. We're here today to vote on 3 pieces of legislation related to community reinvestment, jail design, and reporting, which this committee last heard on October 2nd, 2019. First, we'll be hearing Councilmember Levin's bill, which would establish a commission to make recommendations on reinvestment in communities that have been most impacted by mass incarceration. I want to thank Councilmember Levin for his bill, but also his efforts and work to ensure that there are critical reinvestments made as part of this plan. Second, we will vote on Councilmember Ayala's bill, which requires the Board of Corrections to report on the impact on incarcerated individuals of closing jails on Rikers Island, and requires the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice to report on progress in closing the jails on Rikers Island. The third piece of legislation is my bill, which would establish guiding principles for the design of newly constructed jails and amend the Bill of Rights for incarcerated individuals. This includes mandates for living quarters and natural light, a requirement for air conditioning in all facilities, and a responsibility for all staff to address people in custody by their names. We know, just briefly on that legislation, this upholds the purpose of this plan. It also memorializes conversations that have been had throughout this process about how to build facilities that do not create the same mistakes that were made at Rikers Island, but also to discuss what new facilities should be like and offering new opportunities to be focused on rehabilitation. And so I'm really grateful for the work that staff and others have done to hash out these new facilities and to put more guidance in place about not just the land use application, but what the future looks like. We know, as I said, that Rikers is not just about building new jails. It's about changing the way that we treat people in custody, providing more oversight to transform New York City's justice system. The bills that we are voting today are part of that shift, and I know they're not alone. We have much more work to do, and we've done a number of bills and important pieces of legislation in this council to also to achieve that goal. At this time, we will move to a vote, and I'll ask the committee clerk to take the vote. Thanks.
William Martin, Committee Clerk, roll call vote, Committee on Criminal Justice. 3 pre-considered intros. All items are coupled. Chair Powers.
I vote aye.
Levine.
Pleased to vote yes.
Richards.
Most people have the perception that just closing Rikers Island is the end of the conversation. The real work begins as we begin to fully close Rikers Island and ensuring that there's certainly more transparency and certainly more programming and investment in communities of color, or how we actually get to a humane system, period. And we, obviously, as there's been some voices that have said, we don't need jails. But the way to get there is to make sure that you're addressing the systematic issues that have gotten people there in the first place. A lot of these young men and women entering the system, you look at the common denominator of all of these communities, and there are communities that have historically seen very little investment in education, very little investment in programming. And touring Rikers Island just a year or two ago, speaking to a lot of the young men and women in that facility, the number one thing they spoke about was the need for training and job opportunities on the island and outside of the island. So it's once again not just about building new facilities and putting new paint and new blinds on a new facility. It's about ensuring that there's real investment and a real commitment from the administration, but more importantly, from the council on ensuring that we can really rehabilitate many of those young people who are languishing on Rikers Island, who do have bright futures and who really do need the investment. And with that, I vote aye.
Ampry Samuel.
I vote aye on all.
Holden.
I vote aye.
I vote that's 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions. All items have been adopted.
I echo many of the comments made today about the importance of this work today and the vote tomorrow. Thank you to everybody for your vote here today, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks. This is adjourned.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councilmember Steve Levin, Chair of the Council's Committee on General Welfare. Today we are here to vote on proposed Intro 153B, aimed at improving circumstances for those residing in three-quarters houses. Three-quarters houses are typically one or two family homes or larger apartment buildings run by operators who rent beds to single adults. These entities are run by operators who present themselves as programs, often as a place for individuals exiting correctional facilities, shelters, and residential substance abuse treatment facilities. However, often these places provide no services in-house, are unregulated, and generally are illegal. These facilities often have multiple building code violations and are dangerously overcrowded. And although there are many issues with three-quarters houses, these are not the only alternatives these are the only alternatives to the street or shelter for many individuals. In a survey conducted of residents in three-quarters houses, individuals reported that despite the problems associated with three-quarters houses, they are preferable to living in shelter or on the street. And while the exact number is unknown, it's been estimated that over 10,000 individuals reside in three-quarters houses. Rents in three-quarters houses are typically tied to a resident's public assistance rent levels, which for those who receive the public assistance shelter allowance is set by the state at just $215 a month. And that schedule has been unchanged since 1988. In 2015, an interagency task force was convened by the mayor to target known and suspected three-quarters houses to inspect and relocate tenants. In 2017, the council passed Local Law 13, requiring the mayor's Office of Operations to report on the progress of the task force on a quarterly basis. This legislation requiring this reporting sunset on January 1st of this year. Today, we are voting on a piece of legislation that I'm sponsoring, proposed Intro 153B, which would codify the three-quarters housing task force and continue the quarterly reports. We don't want to pull the rug out from anybody, but we want to ensure that people are housed, but also we cannot tolerate bad actors who are taking advantage of vulnerable populations. Finding housing is a difficult undertaking for most New Yorkers. For people that are experiencing homelessness, this is often nearly impossible. Three-quarters housing thus becomes an option. So we in the council work with the administration need to ensure that we build a fully legal and appropriate infrastructure that would be effective alternative to the unregulated and illegal systems that are in place. I will ask William Martin to the clerk to committee call the roll.
William Martin, committee clerk, roll call vote, Committee on General Welfare, introduction 153B, Chair Levin.
Aye.
Gibson. Lander.
Aye.
Reynoso.
Aye.
Torres.
Aye.
Traeger. My vote of 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions. Item has been adopted by the committee.
This hearing is adjourned. Thanks.
I want to take this opportunity as a reminder that system-wide reform for vendor enforcement and licensing is possible and remains my top priority. Intro 1116, which I'm proud to sponsor, will not only create a dedicated enforcement unit, it will also create a street advisory board to make policy recommendations related to street vending that will support vendors, as well as the brick and mortars, pedestrian, and residents that they share the street with. I hope to have the continued support of my council colleagues to once and for all make vendor reform a reality. And I'm proud to support my colleague, Councilmember Brendan, on his legislation.
For shepherding this legislation and hoping that we can bring some relief to residents in time for Christmas this year, which is right around the corner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Brannon. With that said, I will now call the vote. Mr. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
William Martin, committee clerk, Roll call vote, Committee on Consumer Affairs and Business Licensing, Introduction 1657A, Chair Espinal.
I vote aye.
Chin.
And I vote aye.
Ku.
Aye.
Kozlowitz.
I just want to say that I love Dyker Heights, and I go there every Christmas to see the beautiful lights, and I am happy to vote aye.
Brannan.
Again, with thanks to Chair Espinal and Speaker Johnson for helping get this done, and with an standing invite to all my colleagues to the new and improved vendor-free, hopefully, Dyker Lights, I vote aye.
Powers.
I will take you up on that tour, and I heed your wishes to make the street by street and block by block of Dyker Heights a better place during the holidays, so I will vote aye.
By a vote of 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions, item has been adopted by the committee.
Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. With that said, this meeting is adjourned.